Hi, I'm Kirk Evans, president of U.S. LawShield, and we're here today to talk about a recent ruling out of the Illinois Supreme Court on Illinois' new so-called assault weapons ban. So we're going to break this down into three parts. One, what did the Illinois Supreme Court do or say? Two, some interesting aspects about that decision. And then three, what does this mean for gun owners in Illinois down the road? So one, the Illinois Supreme Court ruled on August 11th, 2023, that the so-called assault weapons ban in Illinois was constitutional, but that ruling was under the Constitution of the state of Illinois and not under the U.S. Constitution. So for right now, the so-called assault weapons ban after that decision is intact in the state of Illinois. So interesting aspects of the ruling is, number one, the ruling, as I said, was not under the United States Constitution. The decision specifically stated that there was not a ruling under the Second Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. Instead, it was a ruling under what's called the Equal Protection Clause of the Illinois Constitution. So the Illinois Constitution and the U.S. Constitution have what is called an Equal Protection Clause. That means folks similarly situated cannot be treated differently under the law. So the plaintiffs, the people seeking to overturn this law in Illinois, argued that the new law allows, for example, retired police officers to still possess these so-called assault weapons. But the average person who's not a retired police officer in Illinois cannot possess such weapons. And so they said that violates the Equal Protection Clause. You're treating two different classes of people differently under the law. Well, the Illinois Supreme Court said, no, we're not treating two classes of people differently because these two classes of people are not similarly situated. One group has a different type of training and practice versus the other group, which does not necessarily have that type of training. So the Illinois Supreme Court said that the Equal Protection Clause does not apply. Another interesting aspect of the decision, it was not an overwhelming majority. It was a 4-3 decision, meaning the ruling was very, very close in the Illinois Supreme Court. All right, so what does this mean for gun owners down the road? So after that decision, the so-called assault weapons ban is still valid in Illinois. Folks in Illinois need to comply with this law until you hear differently. There are at least 5 other legal challenges pending to the new assault weapons ban. One of them has already made its way up to the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals, Federal Court of Appeals, and there could be a ruling any day now, or perhaps months or even a year later on that case. So after that ruling, which is, at least at this point, under the U.S. Constitution, we may have further clarity on the issue. In addition, there are still all of these other cases pending around Illinois, state court and federal court, and there could be additional ones filed. And those cases will work their way up, if they're in the federal system, to the federal courts of appeals. And then in the state court, they'll work their way through the courts of appeals, perhaps all the way back up to the Illinois Supreme Court as well. And if, in either case, if there are decisions made under the U.S. Constitution, those cases can be appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court, but that could be months, if not years down the road. And even then, the U.S. Supreme Court does not necessarily have to take that case. The good news for U.S. LawShield members is, if you are a member, at no additional charge to you, you can call into U.S. LawShield, ask to speak to your independent program attorney, and they can walk you through this entire issue. So if you have one of these items, if you have an item that you're concerned might fall into the new assault weapons ban, or if you're thinking of purchasing one of these items, call in, ask to speak to your independent program attorney. They can walk you through it start to finish at no additional charge. For more information, please go to uslawshield.com. Thank you for watching.